Okay. All right, welcome everyone. Greetings. We'll get our meeting started this evening, beginning with a roll call vote to establish that we have a quorum. Joe?
Here.
Corby?
Here.
John?
Here.
Meredith? Here. Christopher?
Here.
Juan Carlos?
Here.
And I am here as well. We do have a quorum. Corby, has this meeting been properly noticed?
It has.
Thank you. To help ensure that we're centering our board work around our shared values and serving our students, we begin each of our board meetings by reading our district's equity framework and the Ho-Chunk land acknowledgement, which can be found at the top of your agenda. Christopher, would you please be willing to read those for us this evening?
Yes. In the Verona Area School District, our mission is that each student will acquire the knowledge and skills necessary to achieve their personal goals, thrive in a diverse global society, and lead a healthy, self-fulfilling life. To meet this mission, the Verona Area School District will ensure that every individual has access to the educational, social, and emotional support they need to feel valued and affirmed in their unique identities and experiences. We acknowledge that inequities and power dynamics exist in our system such that some individuals, on the basis of their identities, face barriers to accessing opportunities they need to experience success. In acknowledgement of such, the Verona Area School District is committed to disrupting these systems of inequity. And the Ho-Chunk land acknowledgements, there are currently 12 tribal nations who call Wisconsin home, with the Ho-Chunk Nation being the primary group living around Madison. No matter where you are in the state, you are on the ancestral land of a tribal nation. As we begin our meeting, we honor the land upon which we stand.
Thank you. Board, take a peek at the rest of the agenda for this evening. And when ready, I would accept a motion to approve the agenda as written. Thank you, John. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Christopher. All those in favor of approving tonight's agenda signify with aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. So as we begin and shift, just acknowledging first of all that we are in the sacred space that is a school building, and just honoring the fact that this is a sacred space, and given the incidents of today, recognizing how close-knit the Madison area really is, wanting to call to mind folks that are impacted by the incidents of the day at Abundant Life Christian School. As I hand things off to you, Dr. Clardy, I know you're going to share a few more sentiments on behalf of our district, but thank you.
Thank you, and welcome to today's board meeting. Unfortunately, I feel in the role of superintendent, the conversation about school violence has become far too prevalent, and just wanted to name that as we honor and recognize and support in any way possible, and give our heartfelt condolences to Abundant Life Christian School families and broader community. As President Murphy said, we are a tight-knit community around Dane County with connections both close and abroad. But most importantly, we're talking about students and student lives. The very thing that we have come to call to educate and protect, and just wanting to put into space our continued commitment to honor and serve and provide safe spaces for our students. And I'm very appreciative of this board for continuing to provide the resources and supports and ensuring that our students have a safe learning environment. But today it's about Abundant Life Christian School, and ensuring that they are in our thoughts and whatever your beliefs are, and how you just bring blessings to the families that are hurting, as we're all hurting. I would say, I don't know if irony is the right word, but prior to receiving that the call today from our chief of police, we had just left a meeting with the Verona Police Department as we were finalizing our own contract schedule. That conversation started at 8:30 and we wrapped it up at about 9:30, and then received the call a little before 11 o'clock. During that meeting, we worked diligently in partnership with the Verona Police Department and have a finalized proposed contract that we were prepared to send to the Board of Ed next week to begin to expedite that process, and really feeling good about the language and the given, a few tweaks here and there, but nothing that would sway away from the partnership. We're confident in saying that additionally, the liaison officer that would be in schools until the full placement of an SRO in August will begin at the beginning of the school of the year as we close to the time that when we return back. And as they did today, if you went by any of our sites, you saw increased presence of law enforcement in front of our buildings, and that will continue as we continue into break as well, with that commitment from both the Verona Police Department and the Fitchburg Police Department. So again, we're so appreciative of the strong relationship we have with our law enforcement agencies, and are pleased with the significant progress of a contract proposal to bring before the board in January.
Thank you. So good updates.
Any questions on that last? I know it's not technically an agenda item, but sometimes we just need to talk business.
Mm-hmm. And just to clarify, because I know I had to do this with someone recently, when you say the start of a year, sometimes that usually means September to me, but the full SRO would be the start of the academic year of 25-26, but the partnership where we would have someone in our building,
Liaison,
the
yes.
liaison would start at the start of the January.
Calendar year.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right.
Okay.
With that, you want me to continue with the agenda?
Yeah, let's keep continuing that into the superintendent.
First, I want to do as you see in your packet, a multicultural showcase, and I think just time-wise, multicultural showcase indication what schools should be, and the talents of our very diverse population here in the Verona area high school in this situation was on display last Friday. Was it 2 Fridays ago? Last Friday, thank you. In the form of the multicultural showcase. Just when you think about the dozens and dozens of performances representing various countries, ethnicities, languages, that really speaks volumes to the diverse climate that we are trying to support here. And when we think about preparation to allow our students to thrive in a diverse global society, the multicultural showcases is one of those areas where we're allowed to bring those talents to life. So as you can see before you, just a short photo montage of the actions that take place. I believe there's also, usually there's a video that, did you want to record this year? No, okay, no video this year. You have to be there in person. For those displays, but we're thankful to our two lead faculty on that. That was Carrie Hale and Kelly O'Connell, who really guided the efforts in putting this phenomenal program in place. All right, with that, I want to transition to the superintendent's update, and that will begin with our new athletic director, Mr. Adam Steiner. I almost feel thrilled to say new because you've been going at it so hard, and I like those kicks, man.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Welcome.
Thank you all for having me. Thank you, Dr. Clarity. Thank you to everyone. I'm Adam Steiner. I've been glad to be the athletic director and activities director here for a little over 90 days now. I figured I did a count the other day as I was doing some checking off of kind of some commitments I made to the hiring committee when I was in the interview process. So just making sure I was covering my responsibilities that I said I was going to do. Really excited to be here and present this to you. We had a very successful fall season, and we're well into the winter season already. But I think it's good to give credit to where those fall sport athletes were. So just some key things I wanted to point out to you all about kind of how our fall went and kind of highlights of all our teams. So we had 471 participants in our fall sports. So fall is usually our biggest, with football and boys soccer being about 250 people between the two. But 471. One thing that I'm extremely proud of is when I pulled the GPA for that quarter one. So when the students in their fall sports for almost all the time, we had a 3.43 GPA overall.
And that's everyone combined, freshmen through senior. So we have people that are adapting to the high school life and people that are in college level classes. And we're maintaining a high academic level. And it just reiterates what we tell them. We're here to build student athletes. We're not here to just build athletes. We want kids to know that school comes first and they're taking care of their business. And that's why we're excited to keep giving them more and more opportunities. Just some quick things. We had 228 letter winners. So pretty much anyone that played varsity competition. So we're a little around half. 95 were first-time letter winners, and then 114 first-time letter winners in a second or third sport. So it's big for me to see that we have students playing more than one sport, especially in the culture that athletics is going with year-round sports. It's always good to see our athletes, and we have a good group that are playing 1, 2, maybe even 3 sports, and playing at a high level, where they're not just on the team, but they're lettering, which is always big for me. Kind of individual accomplishments. So we had 59 all-conference honorees. In 3 of the Big 8 sports, we had the Coach of the Year, which was also great to see because it shows that we have great leadership in front of our teams, and that helps build successful programs. All area, region, state. So we had 11 individuals that were in that all state category, 3 relays. And then we also had 2 state runner-ups in their individual events, which is always really cool. I was lucky enough to go watch McKenna play down at Nielsen at UW, and the environment there is really cool. So we're excited for the future for those 2 individuals as they're both underclassmen. And one thing I didn't have on here, but I should highlight, is we're also, for the first time in school history, had the Gatorade Player of the Year for football with Trey Poteet, who is already down in Tennessee. So he's gone. He's doing big things for us, and he's representing the Verona School District well. So our boys cross country program, big year for them. Obviously, we were in here celebrating Coach Mark's 60th year. But they also made a return to state for the first time in like 18, 19 years, where they finished 11th, which was very cool. And it's a young core that they're bringing back next year. So there's high hopes for them. And like I said, they got 11th. And Nolan and Owen are the only 2 seniors in that group. So of the 7 runners that ran, 5 of them are underclassmen, so we're excited for what's ahead. Our girls, they had big individual accomplishments with Izzy DeCaviter getting 2nd in the state meet as a freshman. But they also are a young core that's going to grow, and Coach Nelson does a great job helping them push themselves to limits and continue to thrive as a program. Our girls golf team, so Ryan Weenie was a first-year head coach for us. He was the assistant last year. He brings a wealth of knowledge as he's the golf pro just down the road at University Ridge. So big golf mind, and I think it really helped our girls develop through the year. And their season was highlighted by a regional championship as a team, which is very tough to do in our area. We have a lot of good golf teams. Boys soccer, they were competitive. They were in all games all year. It just so happened that they didn't always go their way. So Coach Perkins, who was in his 5th season, him and his staff, they're going to come back and they're going to develop talent and they're going to do good things going forward. Coach Apple, it's fun talking to Coach Apple because tennis is a very different sport if you've never been involved in it. It's unlike anything that I've been a part of. So they had arguably, there are 4 top single players in their state for their flight, but they weren't able to make it to state as a team because you need 4 individuals for singles and then 3 sets of doubles, and we just couldn't quite get enough points. We got 2nd in sectionals, but we did get 3 qualifiers to state, and then McKenna, like I said, got state runner-up in Division I for singles. So we're proud of her as only a sophomore, like I said, underclassman that is going to continue to do big things for us. Football was highlighted by the 3rd consecutive Big 8 Conference Championship. Coach Riley is now, we figured 27 or 21-0 in conference. But what I'm most proud of with that group is the work they do outside of football. They're really involved in some community service projects with Logan Smiles. And he's developing a program that's built on success as a person will lead to success on the field. And that's where we see it. If you weren't able to see the level 2 game against Arrowhead, it was probably one of the best football games I've ever been at in my career, which football has been my sport. So been at a lot of games. Girls volleyball lost a tough 5-set match in the sectional final to go to state. And Jen, with her role as interim, did a really good job of pushing this team and figuring out how to make it work. And Jen is planning on coming back, which I'm grateful for, because I could see her, once she settles into the role, she has a full off season, kind of do some developmental things that they'll be very good going forward. And then lastly, our girls swim and dive program, their season was capped off by, they got 17 of their 18 events went to state, and they got state runner-up to Middleton. Middleton won, but we got second place. And the coolest thing I heard during that is every single member of the team that was on the state team scored points in some way. So credit to Coach Werger and his staff for finding ways to be creative with points. Going into like the third to last event, we were down, felt like a big amount, and then the 100 or 50 breaststroke, 100 breaststroke comes out, and we have 3 girls in the top 6. So that was pretty cool to see. Some other just general department updates I want to go over. So with my elevation role, I had to hire an assistant AD, and I was very lucky that I was able to have a lot of qualified internal candidates apply. And I picked Cindy Peach, who is our district staff wellness and community engagement. And the flexibility in her schedule really allows her to shine in the role, because she has time to come talk to me when I'm free, which is during the day. But she's doing a really good job as the assistant AD. The big thing that we were kind of pushing to start the year was our social media. So if you didn't know, we're active on Instagram now. I think we're about 800, 900 followers. So it's really going quick, and we're trying to highlight those varsity games to try to get community engagement to come to games. And then that goes to Facebook and X as well. So we're just trying to get the games out there so we can try to draw community interest. We started a newsletter just as another form to communicate with some recaps. That always seems to be a thing that our community is looking for. What they told me was like, I want to know how things are going. I can't, it's not in the newspaper anymore. So just something quick where, I can throw together, here's where we're at with these sports. It comes out monthly, usually about middle of the month. And it's something that I'm kind of letting Cindy take the driving wheel on, because she has some experience with it. But trying to use it to highlight all the different areas that fall under the athletics and activities realm has been a cool project for us. I started doing pre and postseason meetings with head coaches. It was interesting for me as just someone like, I've never had to do this before. What do you mean a preseason meeting? And for me, it allows me to see where they're at, see how they're doing, do that kind of check-in with them that's so valuable, especially in today's world. But also kind of tell them, like, here's what I need from you this season, because if there's not a uniform direction we're pulling as an athletic department, some of these student athletes that are seeing 3 different coaches in the year are going to get 3 different messages, and I didn't want that. I want them to understand what it means to be a Verona area high school athlete and to build the school district up. So that's something vital. And then also at the end of the season, just to check in, see how they think things went when it's fresh, and communicate with them in that way to just kind of make a plan going forward. And then also just to make sure we're getting feedback from as many groups as possible. I partnered with someone I've met at the Athletic Directors Association conference that does a survey that it mirrors the questions between the student athlete and the coach. So we can see, the example I do is it'll ask the student athletes, like, my coach is warm and welcoming. It'll ask the coach, I'm a warm and welcoming coach. So I can see and compare where the student athletes are comparing it versus where the coach. Because sometimes just that one piece of feedback is like, hey, you said you're warm and welcoming, but your student athlete said you're not. So what do you think's going on there? Just ways to get communication. And then also with that, there's a caregiver survey with that. So just being able to get feedback from the parents, because they do have a piece of the puzzle in the story that's being told with Verona High School athletics, and making sure that they know, I want to hear your feedback. I won't say that it's going to be put into place, but I want to collect it, read through it, and make action plans. So that way, going into the next season that there's something happening with us. And then just some things that are up and coming that I wanted to just kind of let you know about as we go. So one of my big projects that I'm doing this year is just a coach's history. Obviously with Coach Mark celebrated 60 years, it made me wonder, how long have some of these other coaches been here, and what have they done? How long have they been an assistant coach? So I'm getting that information from all the coaches. Hoping to start early in 2025 what I call SAIL. So it's a student athlete initiated leadership. So what that would be is that's going to be a group of student athletes that I meet with to kind of get that feedback. Like, okay, what do we need to do? Because you hear a lot of times about how like, oh, we wish more people were at their games. But having that conversation, like, what are you doing with your teammates to attend games together? Because I'm a big supporter that the biggest fans of sports should be other sports. And if we can build that crowd up, then we can bring others with us. So trying to start those conversations and make sure that we're having those conversations. And then lastly, kind of part of the role that sometimes get overlooked, and I want to make sure it's not overlooked, is club recognition, involvement, and collaborating with the principal here at the high school, Brian Cox, just to make sure that we're meeting the students' needs when it comes to clubs and they're feeling like they're getting their opportunity to perform in front of the district. Because to me, that's one of the coolest part of being a high school athlete was getting to show what you love to do in front of others. So trying to find ways to promote that. Like I said, fall was a busy one. It was a good one. It was a time for transition. So yeah, very excited. And if you guys have any questions for me, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thanks, Adam.
Yeah.
I mean, these are great updates, not only just the celebrations of our student athletes from the academic side and the athletic side, just to hear how the role is going for you, things that you have planned. It's just nice to have that general update because so much of what you do, right, infiltrates the whole culture of the school. And obviously we're here to give students the full experience while they're at our high school, and you are a crucial part of that, and all your coaches and assistant coaches, everyone. So thank you. These are really great updates.
Yeah, of course.
It is, it's great to see you here.
Yes.
Appreciate it. You have had the whole experience on every, facet of the ASD athletics.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, the only thing I can't say I've done with running a school district is be a parent. That's the only thing that's surpassed me so far. But,
so you've got goals.
got something to strive for now, at least, right? No, I'm excited, and it's been really cool just to reflect on what's happened in the last 6 months of my life. Really, I got married in July, so for those of you who don't know, Joel literally called me the Monday I got back from my wedding to tell me he was leaving. So it's my wife's learning with me, and I'm very thankful for that. But yeah, it's been really good.
That's great. Thank you.
Well, we look forward to hearing
Yes.
maybe post-winter
Winter,
updates,
probably
post-spring,
March.
any data that is interesting. We love data at this
Oh,
table,
yeah. Who
so
doesn't?
thank you, Adam.
Yes.
That's good. Have a good night.
That's a great one. Welcome.
Just want to look back to
Greetings, Dr. Hawkins. I said greetings. And your co-presenters this evening. Yes.
All right. Next in.
We are still in superintendent.
Next one for superintendent's report. We're again, to remind our community that the human growth and development is the purview of the Board of Education, and the board has provided us the opportunity to utilize a committee format for curriculum review and then report back. So as part of that process, this will be the second.
This was our second reporting,
Second
yeah.
reporting of the human growth and development. So thank you, Dr. Hawkins, and everyone for being here today. And I'll let you introduce the committee.
Well, good evening. So we have the pleasure of having our second Human Growth and Development Human Growth and Development Advisory Committee meeting last Thursday. And as part of the desire of the board, this committee has representatives from the committee to provide an update to you all tonight. So I'll allow them to introduce themselves, and then they will share with you a brief update and next steps.
Hello, my name is Diana Castellanos. I'm the Dean of Students of the Verona High School, and I was a former teacher at Sugar Creek for a few years before that. Thanks for having us.
Yes, my name is Jeremy Scott. I serve as a pastor in town here at Memorial Baptist Church in Verona. If you go to Miller's grocery store, look across the street, that's us. So we're very thankful to serve in any way we can in our community. So grateful to serve in this way.
So unique to this process, our committee is made up of both staff and parents, community members, and one clergy. And so we're excited to say that we're there and we're working hard to meet the requirements that you all have set before us. So I'll just set the stage. Last Thursday night, It was designed to allow our participants to experience a lesson, a human growth and development lesson at both the elementary and the secondary level. And they'll take it away and kind of share with you what they learned.
Do you want us to take a clicker?
There you go.
All right, thank you so much. Before I begin, I did want to say thank you for the comments that you made about Abundant Life. I have a lot of close connections there, so I really appreciated the comments that you all made in that sentiment. So thank you for that. That was appreciated. Thank you. All right. So what we did with our committee with our team is we split up into two groups, and at the elementary and then in the high school level, I sat in on the elementary side of it. And what we had someone present the material that they would do normally every year. And so that was really helpful to see, okay, this is what's going to be taught typically to 4th grade and 5th graders is the group that I sat in. And there's 4 videos that are shown on those topics that you see there. Taking care of yourself during puberty, the anatomy of a biological male, the anatomy of a biological female, the menstruation. And then the nurse who typically gives this then makes it the opportunity for questions and things like that. And so the same content is taught both in 4th and 5th grade. What we ask questions about, what about parents' involvement and opting out, things like that, what was the procedure with that? And so there's a preview letter, opt-out form. This is what's currently being done, and we were able to see that. And we, as the committee team, we really appreciated that, and the person presenting did a very good job. It's only taught one time every year, and the students have opportunity to ask questions in various ways, anonymously, also by raising their hand. There were some questions that we had, the 2 main questions that we had, and we're going to continue to research and talk about, were how is it presented? Is it presented to all the class? Or do we divide the students between biological males, biological females, things like that? And there's some history that's gone one way, that's gone another way. Those are some of the questions that some of the people raised, and we're discussing on that. What would be most helpful in that? The second main question that was raised was, what are we comparing the curriculum to? Because we have been charged with, are we meeting the goals? And so we can look at that on paper and say yes, but then there's also another component to it, is, are we doing the best we can possibly do? That's going to require some comparison. And so we're going to be looking at some of the more, some of the things that are out there as well. And then once we have some more information on that, then we can maybe make a more informed, recommendation, because that's our role to do that, is just to advise and make a recommendation. So I was on the elementary side. I'll turn it over to Deanna.
All right, so I had the pleasure of sitting in the high school one. So the high school one is kind of broken down differently. So to start with, in 9th grade in physical education foundations, there's a human growth and development section of the class. So it's only a small portion of the semester that they're taking, and it really only covers these 3 topics: healthy relationships, STIs and contraception, and then consent. And again, it's a small portion of the semester until they later on can take human growth and development as an actual course, which is health, essentially. And so the same procedure is taken as it would be in elementary. So it's like the preview letter and the opt-out form is given to parents as a choice for their child. And again, the links are in there to the actual presentations that teachers are utilizing in their course material. So yeah, it's kind of nice that parents are given that same opt-out decision, and it needs to be given, which is nice that parents are given that opportunity to make a decision that's best for their child and their family. And then once they get into 11th grade, typically is when this is taken, as it was described to us. 11th grade is when it typically best fits in a child's schedule at the high school. Typically 9th and 10th grade are really difficult for the health class to be taken just because of the way the schedules are. They're really dense. So typically in 11th grade, a lot of students take the actual health course, which covers human growth and development, and it has consent, healthy relationships versus unhealthy relationships, contraceptives, shaken baby syndrome, anatomy, gender, LGBTQ plus inclusiveness. So it's a lot more in depth, and it gives students a lot more information to make choices about themselves. And so this one's in a lot more deeper breath, but there was some concerns about, okay, in ninth grade, they're just maybe getting a week of information and there's so much time that passes and there's so much that's happening and there's a lot of decisions they're making. So that was a really big question our group had, is why is there such a big lapse of time? And so we're gonna have the pleasure of, for our next one, hopefully seeing a middle school lesson, so we can also just see the coherence from elementary, middle to high school. But I know that was a concern from parents of just why is there so much time that passes when there's so much developmental change that occurs in that time. So are we truly equipping our children the best to make informed decisions for their health? And so again, the preview letter is sent and the opt-out is given. So health class is taken for one semester at any point across, but like I said, it typically works out for 11th grade to be taken. And so students meet every other day for 87 minutes, and it's 44 total days in the semester they're meeting. And then students also get to keep unit health finder. All right, and the next steps, but I'm gonna go back. So one other question that was brought up was just, a parent was concerned because I believe their child received their health instruction online. And so they were kind of even like, what is the actual consistent delivery method of the health course? I think there is some options, I believe, for summer school that maybe has online portion. So there was also that, just what is the consistent delivery method for students? How are they able to select either like an online course for summer school or to be in person? And I know too, like I said before, just that time that lapses, especially, I know in the first meeting, they looked at like the Dane County youth assessment, and it said that human growth and development isn't talked about a lot in Dane County, in our homes and in our students' homes. And so, you know, school is a great place to kind of bring this forward to our students so they can make informed decisions. And so knowing that the percentage of families that may talk about human growth and development is low, and just really using that as a consideration for, okay, if we're letting so much time pass, you know, where are our students getting their information from, and is it viable? And as we know, social media is a place where students go for information, and it's not always accurate. So those were just some things that we really talked about at the high school level, and even just the order of the lessons. Like I think pregnancy came before contraceptives, and that was a question, like, why is this being talked about before this? You know, the teachers did a great job of explaining that reasoning, but just, you know, even thinking about the delivery of just the order of it. Yeah.
So then our next steps include, when we meet in February, we will experience a middle school lesson. So we will have an instructor come and present middle school. The team also wants to learn about, you know, what else is out there. What are our neighboring districts doing? What other curriculums are out there so that they can make an informed decision and recommendation. And they also would like to hear from the nurses and teachers that actually deliver the human growth and development instruction in the classroom. So we will work to that end to bring the lesson material to them, as well as doing some work to share with them what our neighboring districts are doing. I just also want to remind you all that all this information can be found on our Human Growth and Development page. So our participants, as well as our community, has access to all of this information along with videos and the links. So while each one of the groups only saw their respective lesson, their respective grade band that they chose, they have access to all of the information. And so then they'll receive a follow-up exit slip where they can then share their thoughts, other thoughts and considerations and additional questions. So, what questions do you all have for us? Yes.
I really appreciate this, and as a parent, coming with young children at Cerro Prairie, we covered these topics, we talked about this at great length, and I'm glad that it was supported with the school as well. But as a two-spirit person, so Indigenous who's queer and gender diverse, I just wonder about the inclusion of community members who have that perspective in development of curriculum. So that's the first question. So are we using resources from the community, like outreach? That's a great organization locally. The other question I had was, specifically around gender diversity and LGBTQ inclusion, is that something that's throughout each level? So we're talking about that elementary, middle school, and high school, or is that just limited to high school? And then the last question I have is around mental health and making sure that that's another layer that we're thinking about, especially to think about LGBTQ plus inclusion, as that's, there's a lot of challenges and opportunities to be more inclusive within those specific communities, and something we'll do with that.
So currently, we're evaluating our current state, and so we're LGBTQ plus, that shows up primarily in high school. Your second question.
Was in regards to resources from the community. We also have a gender inclusion committee as part of our district, so using them as a potential resource. I would offer myself as a resource as well, so please consider that as well. But that would be the other question. And then the other one was the idea of another layer of mental health around many of these topics.
So that did come up, that question about where does mental health fall in human growth and development. So while in our current state, it doesn't necessarily show up at the elementary level, it shows up in high school health. That was a consideration, when we think about what's particularly attached to human growth and development. So mental health may come up in our social emotional second step lessons, but it's not necessarily attached to human growth and development at current state.
Okay.
And so that, I believe, I don't want to speak for the team, but I believe that will probably be a recommendation just based on the conversation that we had, that the team had. They recognized the need to address mental health. And so that will probably, fairly certain, might come up as a recommendation as we continue this work.
Well, and so thank you for those and that work, continued work. I would just say as a queer family with gender diversity in our family coming to this district, coming from an urban space here, that was one of our concerns was that we would not feel as included, and that has not been the case as a family. So I just want to thank you for this work and highlight asterisk the important work it is.
Thank you.
Okay. Along those lines, I think, I feel like I've sort of heard you say, if I can reflect something back about the committee wanting to approach this work of not just what are the standards to be met, but how does Verona really reach and strive for what we want this to look like? And so I just want to reflect that back and say how much I appreciate that sentiment, because I think as a board, we feel that way as well. What are standards, what are benchmarks, what are all of those things? And what do we value here, and how are we putting that forth in ways that recognize kind of where there's guidelines and where we want to be. So thank you for elevating that, because I think that's something that this board really values. And we are certainly excited to see the things that we value and want to represent on the behalf of the community reflected in the work that you all are doing. Thank you for your service as well.
So there are two things here that I want to applaud you guys for. When human growth and development, when we first started discussing this as a topic, as something that was going to be taught, I remember parents reaching out to me saying, well, what if I don't want that for my child? And what I love is that you have the preview letter and then you have an opt-out form. Because what I was hearing from a few parents was they felt like it was being forced upon their child and their family, and then they would have quote unquote uncomfortable conversations with their kids that they weren't even ready for. Right. So I really applaud the preview letter and the opt-out form, but also with that, so parents, they're of course involved in this learning process with the child, right? Or are we leaving that up to whatever happens at home?
So they have an opportunity to view the videos beforehand.
Okay.
And so then they're able to see it, have questions with the nurse and or the teacher who's presenting, and then they can, then their child is either opted in or opted out.
Excellent.
I will say when we begin to explore what other districts are doing, other districts may have other ways where they're able to draw the parent in to be more of a partner in the learning or a partner in what the child sees, and they may watch it together and then come back. So there's several different ways that we have learned that the information is presented, but we certainly realize that the parent is the first teacher. And so this information is made available to them along with the links and access for them to view them ahead of time.
Yeah, that was something that was very important to me. I asked that question as well. I was like, okay, what can the parents see in this? And I was very glad to see that the videos can be viewed by the parents. And then they can even choose them to sit down with the kids and watch them together or something like that, which I think is very, very good. One of the things I wrote on our suggestions, that we're going to continue to talk about is maybe we need to be offering educational opportunities for parents about how to have some of these conversations, because I think some parents in our community, they probably just don't know how to have some of these conversations, and they're probably just avoiding it. Okay, all right. So if we can come alongside and say, hey, here's some tips or here's some resources that will help you have these conversations, I think that'll serve our students better.
Excellent. Love it. Thank you.
Well, thank you. We will meet again in February. And as I shared our next steps, and all of this information is available for our team and our entire community on our Human Growth and Development website, on our Human Growth and Development page that's on the Verona website.
Thank you for these updates after the meetings. They're super helpful, I know, for our work in supporting the work that you're all doing. And thank you again for your time tonight and in general.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Team, if you could, please, if you're following along on your laptops, can you hit the refresh button really quick? For just some minor slide adjustment.
Thanks.
All right. Next, we're going to move into state report card update with Amy and Adam. And while the board and our community are really aware of our scores, we wanted to provide some deeper insight and some areas that we would like to, some focus areas. Well, again, we do want to celebrate the great work of our staff and students on our report card as we exceeded expectations. There's always those opportunities to continue to grow, and I think as we continue on our journey, I think moving to a space that significantly exceeds is still our stance of where we want to go. Specifically, I want to bring your attention to, and Amy and Adam will bring this to life, an area where we must, as a district, get better and improve, and that's an area of chronic absenteeism. If you look under our on-track to graduation area, the first area is chronic absenteeism, and we are trending in the wrong direction when it comes to that phase of not just work hard, but we want our students in school. And so we'll talk a little bit more about that, and I'll turn it over to Amy and Adam to take it from there.
Thanks, Dr. Clarity.
Thank you.
So providing just a bit more context on our DPI report card, we know that DPI gives report cards to districts as well as individual schools each year. We know that it's on a 100-point scale, but it's not at like 100%, right? So our 71.6 is not necessarily a letter grade of a C. It's just simply how they calculate our overall score from year to year. That overall score is built of 4 different priority areas, each which are weighted slightly differently. You can look at that little pie chart to see, and it's weighted differently on the district level as it is on the school level. So you can see achievement was weighted slightly higher than target group outcomes, on track for graduation, and growth. We also know that that box at the top with the exclamation mark reminds us that the DPI report card is made of lagging measures. So it is a cumulative kind of calculation that happens with multiple years worth of data. So some of this data in here, this is our 23-24 report card, 23-24 data is incorporated in it, but it goes all the way back to some data sets from 2021 school year. So multiple data measures within this report card. All the data that you're seeing for achievement and growth and things like 3rd grade English language arts and 8th grade math is all contingent upon state assessments. So at the elementary level, that's forward. At the high school, for our 9th and 10th graders, that's the pre-ACT, and for our 11th grade students, that's the ACT. We also know, as we talked about a few weeks ago in our math update, that DPI did change some of the norming this year for all of those state assessments. So while we, for things like the pre-ACT and the ACT and our results policies, have kept with the national norms, the DPI norms are reflected here within this data set. With that in mind though, DPI did do some work this year, knowing that they had multiple years worth of data and recognizing that they had changed some of those achievement cut scores. They did take some actions to kind of control for those shifts. And with that, we are confident in our overall rating of exceeds expectations. So overall, as a district, we were in the space of exceeds expectations. You can see kind of the 5 categories there, but the bottom 3 are really, flip this around, it should be the top 3. All of our schools were in either meets expectations, exceeds expectations, or significantly exceeds. We actually had 2 schools in significantly exceeds, 4 in exceeds, and 4 in meets expectations as well. I'm breaking down the priority areas just a bit and thinking about how they relate to some of our results policies, specifically results policy 2. I think overall major difference here is our results policies are 1 year's worth of data, right? Versus the DPI report card, which is multiple years and some lagging measures. We're focused on the national norms for things like the pre-ACT, whereas this is reflective of more of the state norms on those assessments as well. And the way that DPI in our report card thinks about target groups is slightly different than how we calculate that within our results policies. The target group within the DPI report card is based on students scoring in the lowest area, not any other specific factors like we take into account in our results policies. So those 4 priority areas really of growth, achievement, on track for graduation, and target group outcomes are really how we get our overall DPI score. As a district and as a team, we know when we look at data sources like this as high-level satellite data. It tells us about the system, and it's an invitation for us to dig a little deeper. This isn't the kind of data we can use for day-to-day instructional decisions or major system changes. Tell us, are we on the right track? And again, it's an invitation to, let's look at some of those data sets that we look at a bit more frequently that can tell us how are we doing on a daily basis, on a monthly basis, et cetera, to inform kind of our decision-making and making sure we're headed in the right direction. And with that, we remain really focused. Nothing within the report card changes our focus on disciplinary literacy or PLCs, collaboration, and access to grade level standards in every classroom every day. So we remain really committed to those leadership roles. As Dr. Clarity alluded to though, when we looked at chronic absenteeism, which comes up within 2 of those different priority areas, the on track for graduation, as well as our target group outcomes, we're concerned about what we were seeing within chronic absenteeism. That was an invitation for us to dig a little deeper and think about what our systems were as an area for growth. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Adam to kind of walk us through the steps that we're taking to address chronic absenteeism.
Yeah, so I'll start by sharing, often we look at 2 different ways, data sets when we're looking at attendance. I think the most common one that most districts have looked at over time is just the average daily attendance rate. And that is basically on any given day of school, how many students are present, how many students are absent. Kind of the gold standard there is 94% or above is what we would want to see. And then there's chronic absenteeism, which is basically looking at one student's attendance and what percentage of school that one student has missed over the course of the year, with the goal of always making sure that that attendance rate is over 90%. So when we talk about our data, we're looking at both of those things. And so actually our average daily attendance rate has actually been on a positive trend over the last kind of couple of years coming off of the pandemic. We saw a big jump in 2021, 22 when we came back to school, and have kind of been very steadily climbing from there. And with that, would hope to see and have been seeing also a steady decline in chronic absenteeism. We can see that right here looking at 22, 23, 24, which is a whole year's measure, and then can see kind of current year-to-date with the belief that every time, kind of average daily attendance rate over time will slowly tick down usually as we have more days of school. And it's not impossible to improve that, but the chronic absenteeism rate, because that is a sliding scale based on how many days of school we've had, that's something that we would hope would actually continue to improve over the course of the year. So that's a positive number we're seeing right now, to hopefully even improve more upon that as students continue to be in school. We also know we haven't hit cold and flu season big time yet, some of the cold weather months. And so looking at kind of that November, December, January, February is often we start to see dips in attendance for a number of reasons. So to the point of what are we doing? Our social work team because our pupil services staff members have the same role like collaboration time that all of our teaching staff do. And so that social work team is meeting once a month for 2 hours and has made this their goal for the year. There have been a number of steps that we've taken to help improve systems and help make their work easier to do this. The first goal of just like any MLSS system, what are our universal practices to support student attendance? And from there, what are we doing to support students whose attendance is starting to lag behind? And then what are those more intensive tier 3 supports for students who are more, and the students we're seeing in our report card data who are missing more than 10% of the school, to see what barriers we can remove to help them and their families get them to school. And then the last one, which I'll talk about in a moment, reviewing some of the changes in our process that have helped make their jobs easier and our attendance secretary's jobs easier in tracking that data, continuing to collaborate on that to see what improvements we can continue to make. So actually I'll pause there. So one of the steps that we were able to make as a district is Craig Umlin, one of our data strategists, has taken a spreadsheet that existed, and in the past our social workers would receive information on a spreadsheet as students miss particular amounts of school. So when they miss 5 days, unexcused, and 10 days excused, because that's the point at which any absence beyond that becomes unexcused. And people were doing a lot of hand tabulation of absences and sorting of spreadsheets, and Craig was able to create a spreadsheet that auto-populates from our public school system, and that's where attendance is taken every day by our staff. And basically auto-populate that spreadsheet when students are meeting those thresholds. And then through that process, it actually auto-populates back into PowerSchool. So with the click of a button, a couple clicks of a button, we can send those attendance letters out, those 5-day letters that go out by email, and those 10-day letters that go out in kind of hard copies. And we've also added in a 3-day letter. And so some of you who are district families may potentially have received that. And that's meant to just inform families that you're kind of reaching that first threshold, which is that 5-day threshold, to promote a conversation with school staff about what we can do again to help. That has been huge in saving our social workers time from doing the paperwork of gathering the data to be able to put their time into actually meeting with families to intervene and provide those supports. Another thing that we are looking to actually re-implement, it was something that had been in place in our district prior to the pandemic, that we're looking to get back up and running, and have gotten support from some of our Dane County colleagues, particularly the Sun Prairie Area School District, who has a very good model for this. And that's doing an attendance review board. It sounds very serious, but it's basically a team of people that get together to be the principal, the social worker from the school, the family, as well as central office support. So myself, Ms. Stanley, and anyone else that might support a conversation to come together with a family and talk about what's been tried, what's worked, what hasn't worked, and what other supports might we be able to provide. Also hoping that we can use that as a kind of a better lever for when we might move to a truancy ticket. In many districts, ours included, that sometimes is a very subjective bar to meet, and want to promote a system where having that meeting with us to support some of those problem-solving steps, and hoping that that leads to improvement, that we would only move to a truancy ticket after either a family did not engage in that process, or we didn't see follow-through with some of the steps that we took to help support them, and that would be the point that we will move in that direction. So right now, our high school, it's particularly juniors and seniors, when you look at our attendance data, are the ones who are most chronically absent, and we're looking to unpack kind of why that might be. And are going to focus that attendance review board effort starting with our high school, and hoping that we can start to back that process up to kind of build an in-house system here at our high school to be able to do that, so that we can spend more of our time then intervening a little bit earlier. Because one of the things we found is that often if we can't support some of those positive practices at the time students get to high school, it's a lot harder to make those positive changes. And then the last thing, jumping back to the universal level, or looking at just like any grade system, how are we positively reinforcing students being in school, and beyond communicating out to families some of this information and the impact that being chronically absent can have on one's education, looking to positively recognize students that have really good attendance, and schools and classrooms and grade levels that are showing really good progress in some of those things, and we're exploring what that might look like to make sure that we are not reinforcing some of the equity issues that lead to families or students being chronically absent, but also finding a way to reinforce that, knowing that students want to be in school. When we have great relationships with their staff and school's fun and we're learning, that's going to be one reinforcer, but that mutual accountability of students helping each other with that. And all of us who have been parents know what it's like when your student wakes up excited to come to school. It's a lot easier to get up and go and to get them to school on time. And are hoping that all of those things will coalesce, not just in improved attendance, but knowing that, again, the goal is not this. The goal is that everyday stuff. If we can make an improvement there, we'll also see that in the stat as well.
So with that, that's kind of our update. If we're going to flip to the next slide, we'll take any questions that you have about our report card or our efforts to address chronic absenteeism.
Just one question or comment, I'm not sure which. I really appreciate the focus on kind of chronic absenteeism. I think that's a great area to focus on. My question, I guess, is around making sure that, or is part of this work kind of checking in that our medical standards for keeping kids out of school are in line with current recommendations, because I've had parents communicate to me, and I've personally experienced it myself. Granted, a lot of this was in the past when there was a lot of influx medical stuff, but having a kid who is perfectly healthy, who is sitting at home because the school had told us they can't come into school. And just then getting those communications from the school being like, oh, you know, your kid's missed 4 days of school. Like, well, you told me he had missed 4 days of school. And so just kind of, and some of that's out of our control because we do have to keep all the students in our buildings safe and make sure there's not communicable disease and everything, but just kind of checking in to make sure that what we're doing is in line with current medical recommendations.
Yes, very much so, very much so. And that's a necessary part of the conversation, is we also don't want to create a system where we're promoting people coming to school sick to meet a particular percentage, because all that's going to do is compound absences as more people become sick. And so kind of the classic, 24 hours, fever-free without the aid of medicine, 24 hours after somebody's thrown up, things like that, continue to be kind of the gold standard and guidance that we continue to follow and communicate to families. And beyond that, are trying to work as a nursing and health services team to empower families with the information that we have to support them making their own decision. And while, there continue to be illnesses, I think pertussis, we've seen some of that more this year than some other years. I think some of the COVID guidelines have softened a little bit, where students are able to spend more time, here masked if families are feeling they're well enough to be here, and continue to evolve in that area. So there still may continue to be some things where students might need to be out a little bit longer, but all of that is stuff that we're taking guidance from the health commission to support that.
Great. Yeah, thanks for putting voice to some of that information that I know with robust communication to email, which I appreciate also from your team. It's nice to have this kind of elevated for the sake of the community as well. So thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Okay.
That
So that
closes
closes
superintendent report.
superintendent reports. So moving on to board action, starting with OE6. So as the team comes up, just a reminder for the board, the community, we were given access to a video to preview. All the materials related to this presentation. So community members, you have access to all of that as well. So in concert with that preview, we have our amazing budget team to give us some more info and space for questions related to OE6, which is financial administration.
That is exactly right. And I do, if there was a board policy that I think it was a perfect time to do it, a video preview for all of you. I think this was one where we felt all 170 plus pages of evidence that you have already seen in many cases a couple of times, and we did not need to review ad nauseum, and was audited by a third party. Didn't need a half-hour presentation with a bunch of green check marks. With that being said, we do have some things we wanted to highlight in particular related to the audit. And Pete and I are here tonight to answer any questions if you have specifics or things you want to tease out regarding evidence related to indicators on OE6. So with that being said, we were going to first kind of go through the good news related to the audit. The audit is called out multiple times in OE6 and is kind of one of the anchor documents related to, in my opinion, one of the, if not the most important OE policy, the budget on an annual basis is one of the biggest, if not biggest, jobs of the school board, and certainly our team. And OE6 details all of the ins and outs related to the $100+ million on an annual basis we are all responsible for. Related to that audit, we wanted to make sure the board and the community certainly understood what an audit is and what it isn't. We detail the fact that this is a compliance check. This is a spot check on literally going through and tracking individual financial transactions to make sure we have a sequence that is safe, secure, and has multiple eyes on it related to every dollar and every penny that goes through our school district, and that it is in line with state statute and accepted accounting practices related to this. The world of finance in the public sector and the K-12 sector is quite different than even running a business, where in some cases you can file taxes and do it on a spreadsheet. Here we're responsible for tracking the use and fund related to every dollar that we spend in our budget, and the audit checks for that. There are 3 types of audits, and we I think every year go through all 3, right, Pete?
Pretty much.
So we do the annual financial audit. That's the big document that all of you have access to. We have published on our website already, and it is connected to lots of the evidence in OE6. The single audit is our federal audit that audits anytime you're spending more than $750,000 of federal money. And the membership audit is related to our pupil count, and the board is certainly aware of that. The DPI posts a list of approved audit firms. We just went out on RFP and told the board about that, and we signed a contract with an auditor, I think a 3-year contract with the right to renew for a couple of years, just this last spring. Now to the good news. For the first time since this administration went together, and in my opinion, a fairly rare incident when we're talking about the fact that we have hundreds of millions of dollars in some cases, in our case, over $100 million that's processed by a very small, efficient, and highly skilled team. This is the first time our audit came back without any recommendations for even improvement. And we've been very transparent with the school board every time that there were any even nominal or small findings in our audit. We've been committed every time to the fact that this is a continuous improvement organization, and actually welcome findings when they gave us recommendations for spots to get better. But this audit came back perfectly clean, where the firm, after months of work going through our books, had no findings or recommendations for this school year. And I'm certainly not the standard that I've guaranteed to the board that we won't have spots that an audit in the future tells us you have to tweak a practice here, or we identified this. That's the whole point of going through the audit process on an annual basis, but we've got a clean one this year. We're super excited to present to the board. So I grabbed our 4 folks in the office last week and said, we got to get you guys on permanent record with the school board. So that is Teresa, Pete, Michael, and Adrian. And as I said, and I do mean this, this is for the amount of work that goes into tracking every single nickel that comes through this school district. This is a small team by even K-12 standards to do that work. And the only way it happens is to have 4 incredibly skilled and dedicated people that don't miss work, know their job, and come here every day doing amazing things for our school district. So certainly wanted to publicly thank them. It shouldn't take a clean audit to do so. I certainly find our ways to recognize this amazing team, but wanted to make sure the board knew this is kind of the brains and hard workers behind a really good piece of news on a day that we could use a little bit of good news.
Yes, that's amazing. Congratulations, Pete and team.
Last piece, and then I'm actually going to turn it over to Pete to discuss a budget amendment we've got for the board. We did think it was important to detail a couple of the real key pieces related to the audit being mentioned in OE6 and have highlighted those for the board. But again, this is just the piece of evidence we want to make sure that the board has every assurance that we are in a good place financially as a school district, and just as important, a good place process-wise, that all of those things are sound. Dr. C?
First, congratulations again, as I was talking to the team, and I think all of us noticed that you did put yourself in the picture.
I was behind the camera.
But you mentioned turning it over to Pete for a budget amendment. We probably should completely close A and then go to B after that, so I'll turn it back to.
Totally good with that.
for that.
Did you want to highlight anything specifically on slide 49? I saw, you just referenced it, I know, but anything you want to put voice to?
No, we just
Okay.
we did the same thing last year. We just pulled out what we considered to be a few of the key pieces of evidence to kind of bring us full circle on why the audit is so interconnected with OE6.
Okay, thank you. So board, any questions that we want to ask of our admin team that is here presenting OE6 tonight?
No, good job.
I had one question, actually.
Yeah.
So in just listening to the video, which is great, thank you. If we have purchases under 250K, but throughout the year they total more than 250K, what's that process like?
Yeah. So, and that does happen. We called that out and detailed that evidence. An example might be a vendor like Amazon, where we do, we do a decent amount of business across the school desk for next day service and competitive pricing. And certainly we spend more than $10,000 a year on Amazon itself. So our board policy says any single purchase over $10,000. And then we go through these things with our principals and our accounting secretaries on a fairly regular basis. We try to make sure that everyone avoids at all costs what I refer to as a serial purchase, knowing that you have a $7,000 purchase on the way and another $4,000 purchase on the way from the same vendor for a similar product. And you make a serial purchase to avoid the board threshold for $10,000, which is not too stressful, but could be the easy way out. So we keep our eye on that, but I can tell you almost on a daily, if not weekly basis, we have accounting secretaries and principals reaching out and saying, here's what I've got going on, problem solve this one a little bit for me. 9 times out of 10, we're like, make the purchase for $12,000 or $13,000, fill out the OE6 paperwork that has a detailed kind of check boxes in terms of finding competitive pricing or justifying a sole source provider, and do it right on the front end. So that'll never be avoided, in my opinion. You can have many vendors district-wide that end up over that $10,000 board threshold. But as always, and I think, Adrian, who you saw in that picture, love her to death. She is the one who cuts all the checks and makes all the payments for our school district. Sometimes almost to a fault, is watching for that stuff, saying, I noticed this product being purchased at 10 different schools over this 1 month span. She'll send an email to accounting secretary saying, we're going to do a bulk purchase next year. Fill out this Google sheet. I'm going to get better pricing, and I'll order it for all of you. Just give me the account numbers. Right. And that's really what we're hoping to continue to have happen.
I do remember this conversation coming up in the context of board approval for maybe some of the larger, building projects that we had done where maybe the original bid was under $250,000. But I remember a discussion about what if there's a change order that then puts the total value over, like, are we talking just the value of the change order, or are we talking the whole project value?
Yeah, we would bring that to the board if we flip, especially the 250 mark. So 10,000, you guys do not want to hear from me. If we went over the $10,000 threshold on the 37th time we did business with an individual vendor at 10 different sites. But we would give the board, we would, in all cases like that, if we had a $220,000 project going on, the board would likely know about it already. And if it ever went to a spot that had flipped over the threshold, we would come and give you guys an update.
Well, it's good to know we have a process to avoid slippage and leakage, because sometimes those things happen and you have these.
And it is a credit to you for writing this policy.
Mhm.
This was not in place 4 years ago. And now we have a airtight system that we will not process a payment, a single payment to a vendor over 10,000 unless our process related to OE6 has scrutinized that purchase. We've written essentially code through jot form to make sure that there is a way that people on the purchasing end have to justify that purchase and be in line with board policy.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Any additional questions board members have for the team? Okay, so board, we've received and discussed the superintendent's monitoring report for OE6. So we'll now accept a motion to accept and approve the report as presented, so we can just clarify any further discussion and move toward our vote. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, John. Is there a second?
Second.
Thanks, Joe. Second. Board, any further discussion as it relates to this OE6 regarding compliance before we take a vote? Okay, so there's a motion from John, a second from Joe. Is there, all those in favor of approving OE6 as being in compliant as presented, signify with aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, the report has been approved. Thank you very much. And all the reading for all the community members. Thank you again for all the evidence. It's very robust, but super informative and clear as day. The transparency I appreciate with this team. Obviously, we have the policy behind it, but your openness with the public, so appreciated.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
It's our duty to do so thank you.
And it was exciting as president to talk to the audit team for the first time and to be able to give like honest, great feedback.
President Burton called the audit. Yes.
That was really fun.
Love.
That was really fun. All right.
All right,
Now we'll shift.
Great transition. We're here to provide you with the first piece of evidence
For
for
next
the
year.
monitoring report for next year.
Great.
Because it will be included in next year's monitoring report where OE6 requires, if we move money or add money or take money away from any specific large fund, we can't do that. You guys have to approve it, and we have to recommend it to you if we're gonna do it. We have a budget amendment and a transfer that we're recommending for you tonight. I'm gonna let Pete take these few slides. I think he's gonna talk through the fund numbers. The interesting one, I think, Pete, is the board will be interested in one that you didn't necessarily budget for, and that's that $117,000 rescinding of property taxes.
Thank you, Chad. It's funny now, because I've looked at the slide so many times, and I just now, as I'm looking up there, I'm like, oh, we're missing a zero in that $8.5 million shortfall up there, and I had not noticed that until right now. So that should say $8,500,000 shortfall, which is something that we have discussed numerous times. This is the first time that we had set up a budget here, knowing that we were going to have a negative budget impact this year, because we were using our fund balance to purchase the land parcel over in the Fitchburg area. But a couple pretty major events have happened here, so we thought we would share these events with the board, and we'll adjust our budget accordingly. The first one, as we can see on there, is TID 29 in the city of Madison closed on us. It was something that we didn't know that was happening when the budget was set, and a check for almost $480,000 showed up in the mail. So we've already recorded that revenue, and we know that would be decreasing the amount of the shortfall on there. Now, a second one that happened is what we're calling as the refunded and rescinded property taxes. Now, there's a property in the city of Fitchburg that was overassessed their property value a couple years ago, like in the year 2020 and the year 2021. So maybe it's more than a couple years ago, and they were billed too much lower their property taxes, because our property taxes went out to all of these homeowners once we send the levy to the municipality. So since they were basically overbilled for taxes that they shouldn't have had to pay, they end up requesting the city of Fitchburg pay them back. Okay? So then it calls on us to pay our portion back to them. So this was our portion of paying that large theater in Fitchburg to pay them back. Flip side of this is we're actually able to record this as a tax revenue next year, so we're able to increase our Fund 10 levy by that amount next year. It'll just all be on part of the regular 10 fund levy when Chad and I are bringing the levy to you next year, but it will include that $117,000 in there.
Got it.
So, and Pete, you did mention that normally Pete holds a budget line in there, it's like $30,000, because there are some odds and ends that trickle in, but this was an anomaly that he has not seen on an annual basis. It was one big single property owner, and we certainly didn't have a heads up on it.
I've looked up the last 5 years, and a couple of years were $0 and $200. But one year it was high as almost $40,000 for a different landowner. I'm not sure who that was. But yeah, so in fact, it averaged out to be about $12,000 a year is the normal amount that is what we have for that expense. Like I said, that we are able to claim as revenue in the next year. So it's normally a lot smaller, but in this case, it was large enough for me to ask Fitchburg, can you give me a little bit more detail on this? And then that's when they started sending me some documentation on it.
So big idea in this one, we actually shrink our budget shortfall for the year, depending on where we end up in the end of June. And we fully expect to come back to the board here in the spring. We have a debt defeasance on the way. We're continuing to monitor Fund 73 related to post-retirement benefits. And we will likely have another budget amendment or two as we're working on wrapping up this current budget cycle. But for the time being, in general, this is good news that we had a TID close that offset an unexpected expense and having less of a shortfall for this fiscal year. Pete, this is straight out of your workbook, DPI form, isn't
This is DPI says that this is the format that they recommend for us showing you the budget changes on here. So at the very top section, you can see how our revenue budget went from 60 million to 61 million for a $479,000 increase. Now, one of the other things I want to point out is there are a few small transactions that happened. You see the $503 in and $503 out. That was just one of our schools, one of our principals wanting to move some budget dollars around within their own budget. So all it is a in and an out right there. So it's not affecting our bottom line. So that 8.5 million that we saw that became $8.1 million shortfall, it's not going to be affected by those particular ones. But it is still a budget change, and I had to make those changes at the Skyline. And that is all that I had.
It does require a board vote. We are here to answer questions if you have any. If you don't, once you vote on it, Pete presses go and this is final. We meet again.
What questions do you have, Board?
I have a question. So that additional windfall, does that impact any aid numbers, aid formulas? Since it's unexpected revenue, it's pretty large.
It does affect our equalization aid. It's treated in the equalization aid formula as just like a regular tax revenue.
Okay.
And it does impact our aid, so we would get a little bit less equalization aid next year.
Okay.
It's a small amount, but it is an amount, so it's one to consider. And as Chad and I are doing budget updates during the year, what we'll do is we'll even try to figure out how this year's going to end and what our aid amount is going to look like next year. It's really hard to know what that's going to look like when the state budget hasn't been passed, so we don't know how much money is going into the aid pot. But this will be one of the factors that we'll put in. So once we get an idea of where we think the aid formula is going to go, then we can add that extra bit of revenue in there, and we'll recalculate out our aid for any budget presentations that we give.
Since it counts as tax revenue, does it count against the revenue limit?
No, it does not count against the revenue limit. When I said it counts as tax revenue, I'm talking about on the equalization aid formula that's out there. So they look at all your tax revenue, your equalization aid revenue, and they call that your revenue, and then they compare that to all of your expenses and such too. So this is just part of that. So it was like way too detailed of a number. So,
Can't wait to go to that class in January.
I was just, yep. Budgeting 101.
I need
Yeah.
like 2 or 3 takes of that.
Right. Great. Any additional questions? Okay, then I would accept a motion to approve the 24-25 budget transfer as presented.
So moved.
Thank you, John. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Corby. I'll pass the seconds around today. Almost there. All those in favor of approving the 24-25 budget transfer as presented signify with aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right. Thanks, Chad and Pete. Appreciate your
Thanks,
time.
everybody.
Thank you,
guys.
board. Moving on to agenda item number 7, public comment. I am not aware of any. Lori, any public comment you're aware of? Thank you. Okay, so then moving on to superintendent's consent agenda. So board, making sure that you've looked over the consent agenda. Are there any questions about the items listed? Okay, hearing none, the superintendent's consent agenda is approved as presented. Similarly, please, making sure you've looked over the board consent agenda. Are there any questions? I know this non-rhetorical action is really helpful, thank you. Hearing none, the board's consent agenda is also approved. Looking ahead to future dates, we don't have a board meeting for 3 weeks, so winter break is coming, so we will reconvene here January 6th. Hope everyone has a wonderful winter break, extended break. We just so appreciate the calendar discussions that went into this starting break on the 20th. And then we've got everything set for WASB. Anything else to note about dates, board? Okay. Great, I think I missed board updates, but any board updates? Anything anyone wants to elevate before we start to wrap up? John is speaking for all of you. Do y'all hear this tonight? Okay, just checking. All right, so then, if I can find where I am, we will then adjourn to closed session under Wisconsin statute 19.85 sub 1 sub C to consider employment, promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation data of any public employee over which the governmental body has jurisdiction or exercises responsibility, specifically considering the employment contract of the superintendent.
I know that.
So we will adjourn via roll call vote. In favor of adjourning to closed session, Joe?
Aye.
Corby?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Meredith? Christopher?
Aye.
Moncorlips? And I am aye as well. We are adjourning to closed session. We'll take a few moments to just make that shift and transfer. Thanks all.